Could we create a Lord of the Rings-like story on a role-playing server? It might be a silly question, maybe the answer is obviously no, but does it have to be? I've always dreamt of a role-playing game world where epic tales can occur that can affect the entire server. Drama of the kind that we only see in movies or read about in books. With players as the main characters and side characters, the fate of the world might be at stake. Maybe some unlikely heroes will save the day, or fail to do so. The idea that we, as players, get to play act our characters in such powerful, game world-changing scenarios always captivated my imagination, and led me to believe this will be both a new gaming and storytelling frontier. Unscripted stories where we get to participate in and change the outcomes by our very actions. How come we don't have that yet? Well, suppose you just drop players into a world you created and tell them to play it out with minimalistic interventionism. Even with permadeath and hardcore role-playing rules in place, one of two things will happen. It will either be very chaotic and short-lasting, or very boring and everlasting. For chaotic and short-lasting, look no further than civilization simulation events. Those are events often run by YouTubers that last from a few days to a few weeks, with a server online a few hours per day. If you die in those events, you die. You can't come back. Some even include role-playing and special admin events.
Imagine if the medieval times were recreated in Minecraft, with ancient weapons, mysterious creatures, and 100 players split into 3 different kingdoms. Well, today, I created a public server with a giant medieval map and split players into 3 races with unique abilities. Their goal is to build a kingdom and survive through different medieval world events, like the plague, huge orc invasions, and eventually invading other kingdoms. Players are also set to hardcore mode, meaning they only have 1 life, which will become the most advanced civilization, and will conflict emerge between the races. Welcome to the story of medieval civilization.
With the right setup, narration, and storytelling, pretty interesting, unscripted storylines can transpire.
By attempting to blow up the quartermaster's house, Zelius betrayed our people, and for this, he must die. Glory to Acheron.
Some are a bit more amateurish, chaotic and repetitive, and end up being a last man standing sort of deathmatch. Yet, even those which are done extremely well are still far too chaotic and short-lasting to reach anywhere close to the depth and grandeur of a proper fantasy epic. It's not a knock on them, they're the closest thing to it actually. But they're doing their own thing, which again is cool but not epic fantasy. The simple fact is that players alone can't drive an epic narrative. They can influence it and help shape it, but they can't drive it. For that, you need a dungeon master. That pretty much X's every game without advanced dungeon mastering tools. In fact, the only game I know which does it superbly well out of the box is still, to this day, Neverwinter Nights. While other games may have advanced players' base building features than Neverwinter Nights, for a story, as it turns out, grinding is not a necessity. That's right, you heard me. Grinding is not a necessity. In fact, it might even be a distraction. Whenever has a grand saga focused on grinding, building, resource gathering, crafting, they don't promote an epic story. They're great for civilization simulation events, but here the Dungeon Master is in control. So for epic fantasy we're going to need a Dungeon Master, and for an epic scale, more than a few. The main thing that civilization simulation events get right, they have an ending. As opposed to a lot of the hardcore roleplay servers that have been around in Neverwinter Nights and other games. So, turns out, an epic story can't last forever. It needs an ending. In the past I used to think permadeath is the cornerstone for an epic story. I talked about it a whole lot, but actually permadeath is just a natural byproduct of a server with an ending. That's why I now believe this is the most important feature now. An ending. It may sound sad or depressing, but just like permadeath can be sad and depressing, it's a necessity. So how do we get it right? We only need 3 core things. A setting fitting for hardcore roleplay, dungeon masters in control of the narrative, and a world that can end at any moment. We don't have to put a timer on it. It can last weeks, months, even years. But it has to end. It can run for a few hours per day while the dungeon masters are online. At the beginning, it's important to give players time to stew in mundanity, form relationships, play your role in whatever outpost or citadel, experience some low-impact DM events together. This builds passion amongst the players, it builds familiarity and gives meaning to their lives. Later on, when the high-impact cataclysmic events unroll, everything will feel much more meaningful, much more powerful. This is the frontier waiting to be crossed. There is a lot to unpack here. How could we make it happen? Well, that's why I'm back.
Well, you can be great or you can be around forever, right?
True.